She had always been painfully shy, more comfortable observing humans from a distance than interacting with them, but something about their strange biology fascinated her endlessly. Her wide, luminescent eyes followed the bustling life of the city as she hovered near the edge of her tiny apartment balcony, tail curled nervously around her legs. Every gesture, every motion seemed to tell a story she longed to understand. She had read every human book she could get her tentacles on, absorbed every documentary, and even tuned into live feeds, but one concept eluded her completely: pregnancy. The idea of carrying life, feeling it grow within oneself, and the changes it caused seemed both terrifying and wondrous, and she wanted to experience it herself. Not because she needed to, not because her species demanded it, but because she simply needed to understand. Curiosity like hers didn't care for caution or embarrassment. While her roommate lounged lazily on the couch, half watching a human soap opera with exaggerated expressions, she quietly scrolled through her hollow tablet, trying to find answers. That's when she saw it, an advertisement for a human pregnancy potion. The title glowed enticingly in bold letters, promising an experience so realistic it was practically indistinguishable from actual pregnancy. Her heart, or the equivalent organ in her alien anatomy, skipped a beat. Could this be it? Could she finally understand the sensations, the cravings, the emotional roller coaster, and all the subtle nuances humans whispered about but never fully explained? The more she read, the more convinced she became. According to the reviews, the potion was harmless, easy to take, and reversible, though she noticed one reviewer joking about unexpected side effects. She shrugged, her antennae twitching nervously. "What's the worst that could happen?" she murmured to herself, even though a tiny flicker of doubt danced along her spine. Her limbs trembled slightly, not from fear, she told herself, but from anticipation. She imagined floating gently in a glowing bubble of soft light, feeling her body change in ways that would reveal secrets humans had guarded for centuries. It was at that moment that her roommate, a mischievous human with a permanent smirk plastered on his face, leaned over her shoulder. He had been observing her obsessive scrolling for a while, quietly amused. "Ah, so that's what you've been hiding from me," he said, eyes sparkling with amusement. "Curious little alien, aren't we?" She froze, tail curling tighter as she tried to shrink into herself, invisible and silent, but of course, being luminescent made that impossible. I'm just reading," she stammered, antennae quivering. "Just curious about human biology." Her voice was soft, trembling in a way that made it sound almost like a whisper carried on a gentle wind. Her roommate's grin widened. Sure, he said, clearly enjoying her discomfort. "You know, I've heard of a potion that'll make you feel exactly what you want. Want to try it?" His tone was teasing, but there was a glint of something else, something playful. Before she could answer, he had already fetched a small vial from his cluttered shelf, claiming it was the same potion she had been reading about. Her antennae stiffened. Could she really do it? The idea of finally knowing what it was like, of feeling those elusive changes firsthand, made her pulse quicken. She hesitated, tiny drops of sweat forming on her forehead as she considered the consequences. But curiosity, that insatiable, burning curiosity, pushed her forward. She took the vial, shaking slightly as she uncorked it. The liquid inside shimmered with a strange, inviting glow, almost hypnotic in its beauty. She glanced at her roommate, who nodded encouragingly, hiding a mischievous grin that she didn't notice. She brought the vial to her lips, took a deep breath, and swallowed. Immediately, a warmth spread through her body, starting from her stomach and radiating outward in gentle waves. She gasped softly, antennae twitching in surprise, and wobbled slightly on her feet. At first, the changes were subtle, a tingling in her limbs, a curious lightness that made her almost float. But then it escalated. Her body began bouncing involuntarily with each heartbeat, tiny hops that startled her into gripping the edge of the table. Her limbs stretched and contracted in odd, unpredictable ways, and her blush glowed in a series of alien hues that shifted from soft lavender to bright pink. Her roommate doubled over, laughing silently, but she barely noticed, too preoccupied with the strange sensations coursing through her. Then came the next effect, a sudden, inexplicable wave of pheromones emanated from her body. The air thickened, curling and shimmering with colors she didn't recognize, and suddenly her normally aloof cat, an unimpressed, sleek creature named Nimbus, started rubbing against her legs incessantly, purring in exaggerated devotion. It was as though the cat was experiencing its own version of pregnancy symptoms, bouncing along with her, following her from room to room. She tried to shoo Nimbus away, but each motion caused another uncontrolled hop, and the pheromones seemed to intensify with every attempt. Her mind raced in a jumble of emotions, excitement, embarrassment, and an odd sense of delight. She had expected subtle, educational experiences, not full-blown chaos. She stumbled toward the counter, clutching at floating objects to steady herself, and nearly collided with the hollow screen, which displayed dancing, exaggerated advertisements for more potions. She barely had time to process what was happening when she noticed that even her shadow seemed to ripple and undulate with her bouncing, reacting as if it were alive. Through it all, a strange thrill ran through her. This was exactly what she had wanted: first-hand experience, understanding at the most intimate, uncontrollable level. But the reality was far more hilarious and ridiculous than she had anticipated. Her shy demeanor made every hop, every glowing blush, and every cat-induced catastrophe feel simultaneously mortifying and thrilling. She realized, even as her legs threatened to launch her into the ceiling, that she had no idea what she was truly in for. The potion had taken her curiosity and amplified it to absurd, uncontrollable extremes, and she could only cling to the hope that she might survive the experience with dignity, or at least with her tail unbroken. And as she bounced once more toward the center of the room, eyes wide and ears twitching, she caught sight of her roommate's barely contained grin, the mischievous glint in his eyes confirming what she had begun to suspect. The potion she had taken was not quite what she had read about online. But despite the chaos, a small, almost shy smile crept across her face. Curiosity had its price, and she was paying it in laughter, awkwardness, and bouncing, but she had never felt more alive. The potion's effects didn't wait for her to adjust. They surged through her body like a tidal wave of absurdity, leaving her hopping uncontrollably around the small apartment. Each step bounced her slightly off the floor, as though the universe itself found her curiosity irresistible and insisted on exaggerating it. Her glowing blush pulsed with every heartbeat, spreading to her shoulders and tips of her antennae, coloring the air with faint iridescent sparks. She tried to catch herself on the countertop, but every motion seemed to trigger another unpredictable hop, sending a stack of plates wobbling dangerously before they clattered to the ground with a symphony of comedic chaos. Her tail lashed nervously, accidentally knocking over a lamp that spun in slow circles before toppling, adding to the growing pile of minor disasters. And then the pheromones hit. The moment she paused mid-bounce to catch her breath, the air shimmered and thickened around her, carrying a magnetic, intoxicating scent that made everyone in the vicinity unusually affectionate. Her roommate, who had been casually lounging, suddenly found himself compelled to hover uncomfortably close, eyes soft, and voice far too sweet as he murmured, Are you okay?" He shuffled his feet nervously as the unusual pheromones made even mundane concern feel like flirtation. Even Nimbus, the normally aloof cat, became obsessively clingy, rubbing, purring, and nuzzling her with exaggerated devotion, jumping onto her bouncing shoulders as though trying to share the experience. The alien girl squeaked in alarm and tried to escape, only to bounce straight into a bookshelf that leaned precariously. Books tumbled down in a gentle cascade, some landing perfectly stacked, others scattering with comedic precision. She spun, hopping in the opposite direction, attempting to reach the kitchen for some kind of grounding object, but her movement created a strange visual aura, sparkling pheromone trails curling through the air, leaving a visible path of attraction that caused even the furniture to seem to lean toward her, as if bewitched. She blushed furiously, glowing in shades of pink and lavender, wishing desperately for invisibility, but the potion apparently had other plans. Her romantic interest, or at least the human she had secretly admired for weeks, walked in at the worst possible moment. He froze, eyes widening at the chaotic display of bouncing, glowing alien blush, pheromone mist, and a very demanding cat clinging to her torso. What's happening?" he stammered, trying not to step too close yet drawn irresistibly by the strange, alluring cloud surrounding her. She stammered back, and Tenny twitching nervously, trying to explain while hopping from one foot to another. Every word seemed to come out in bursts, distorted by the potion's unpredictable effects, which made her voice alternately high-pitched and melodious, then low and resonant, adding a musical, absurd undertone to the scene. The cat leapt again, knocking over a mug that spilled a vivid purple liquid across the counter. The alien girl flailed, trying to catch the mug, but instead sent herself bouncing into the air. Her crush lunged forward instinctively, catching her mid-hop in a clumsy, awkward embrace that was neither comfortable nor graceful. Both tumbled backward onto the couch in a heap of limbs and glowing blush, with the pheromones making each accidental brush of skin feel infinitely more intimate than it actually was. She whimpered softly, trying to disentangle, but each movement triggered another involuntary hop, sending cushions, books, and papers flying. Even her normally aloof neighbors were affected. One, curious after hearing the commotion, opened the door to peek inside, only to freeze mid-step when the pheromones reached them. The neighbor's eyes softened, voice trembling in forced affection as they asked, Do you need help?" She yelped, and Tenny wriggling in embarrassment, and bounced toward a corner to hide, only to realize that each corner was now a potential stage for more chaotic effects. Floating orbs of light, seemingly emanating from her glowing blush, bobbed along the walls, drawing the cat into chasing them in dizzying circles, which sent a stray pile of laundry flying into her arms, adding more weight and absurdity to her already uncontrollable bouncing. Despite the chaos, a tiny thrill pulsed through her. She had wanted to understand pregnancy firsthand, and now she was experiencing something no human, or alien, could have anticipated. Each uncontrollable hop and pheromone-induced interaction revealed a new layer of sensation, the helplessness, the intensity, the strange joy of being noticed in ways she had never imagined. And yet, it was terrifying in the most hilarious way. She tried to hold on to her dignity, but dignity seemed almost irrelevant when her cat was mid-air. Her crush was glued to her by invisible attraction, and the air itself shimmered with her uncontrolled, intoxicating essence. Her roommate, clearly entertained, tried to intervene. Maybe you should sit down," he suggested, but even as he spoke, he hovered closer than he should have, drawn by the strange allure. She tried to comply, aiming for the couch, but bounced past it entirely, landing on the floor in a tangled heap with Nimbus purring insistently atop her. The room smelled faintly of strange flowers, and the shimmering pheromone mist highlighted the absurdity of every movement. She blinked rapidly, and Tenny twitching, and realized she could either panic or embrace the ridiculousness. She chose the latter. Bouncing, flailing, glowing, pheromone-emitting, cat-laden chaos or not, there was something exhilarating about surrendering to the potion's effects. It was a ridiculous, messy, overwhelming sensation, but she could feel herself learning more than any observation ever could. Each bounce taught her a little more about balance, sensation, and the surreal intimacy of being desired without even intending to. The air around her vibrated with the laughter of her roommate, the astonished murmurs of her crush, and the frantic purring of her cat, creating a symphony of absurdity that was strangely comforting. By the time she collapsed, finally, onto a cushioned pile with her glowing blush fading slightly, she realized something important. Curiosity could get you into hilarious trouble, but it could also open doors to experiences that no careful observation could provide. And while the pheromones, bouncing, and airborne cat antics had left her utterly exhausted, she couldn't stop herself from smiling. Somewhere between the chaos, embarrassment, and ridiculousness, she had begun to feel a strange connection with her crush, a connection amplified by absurdity, laughter, and shared vulnerability. The potion had done far more than simulate pregnancy. It had thrown her into a whirlwind of human and alien interaction she would never forget. The chaos wasn't slowing down. Every time she tried to take a deep breath and regain control, her body betrayed her. The bouncing had become rhythmic now, almost musical, as if her limbs had developed minds of their own, hopping in perfect, absurd harmony. Each bounce sent small objects floating, glimmering pheromone trails spiraling behind her like ribbons of light. She tried to apologize to her crush, whose eyes followed her every movement with a mixture of concern and fascination, but her voice pitched up and down unpredictably, turning simple words into a bizarre melody. He leaned closer instinctively, drawn by the lingering pheromones, and she shrieked, hopping away in panic, only to land in a precarious heap of laundry that had escaped from the top shelf moments before. Nimbus, the cat, had become a full participant in the ordeal, bouncing alongside her as though the potion had shared its absurd effects. Each paw tap sent tremors across the floor, and the cat's normally dignified demeanor had transformed into a manic, almost comical insistence on being the center of attention. She tried shooing Nimbus away, but the cat clung, purring loudly, rubbing against her legs, and batting at the glowing pheromone trails that seemed to float in the air. Every movement she made caused new sparks of color to bloom from her body, filling the room with a chaotic light show that accentuated her frantic, awkward motions. Her blush flared brighter and brighter, almost as if it had a mind of its own, tinting her antennae in vibrant shades that shifted unpredictably. Her crush finally tried to intervene directly. He reached for her hand, attempting to guide her toward a chair for safety, but the moment his fingers brushed hers, the pheromones reacted. He froze, eyes softening into a dreamy, almost comical expression of affection, muttering something incoherent before shaking his head as if to clear it. She glanced at him, panic written across her glowing face, and realized that not only was she bouncing uncontrollably, but her accidental charm was turning everyone around her into unwitting participants in the potion's chaotic effects. Even the neighbor who had peeked earlier now hovered just outside the door, blushing in exaggerated human fashion, staring at the shimmering glow in the apartment. She attempted to explain, but her words bounced in pitch and volume with each hop, turning sentences into staccato bursts of alien-human hybrid sounds. The combination of embarrassment and hilarity left her twisting through the apartment like a comet caught in a storm. Every corner she turned presented a new disaster: a bookshelf that tilted dangerously, a floating pile of utensils from the kitchen, and Nimbus attempting to scale her back like a furry, insistent satellite. Even the hollow tablet she had used to order the potion now floated in the air, spinning slowly as if laughing at her predicament. She tried to grab it, only to ricochet off a wall in a comically exaggerated arc, landing in a pile of pillows with her crush diving in after her. Somewhere in the midst of the chaos, the mischievous roommate reappeared, grinning at the spectacle. He had been observing silently, enjoying the full extent of the potion's absurd effects. "You really know how to throw a party," he teased, his voice carrying over the bouncing, glowing, pheromone-charged room. She glared at him, antennae stiff and twitching, but could only manage a squeaky, distorted sound of protest that made him laugh even harder. Her crush, however, seemed more charmed than irritated, reaching out again to steady her mid-bounce, inadvertently reinforcing the pheromone-fueled attraction. The result was a bizarre dance of limbs, glowing blushes, and flailing tails that somehow contained hints of unintentional intimacy. Her mind raced in a mix of panic and exhilaration. She had wanted to understand pregnancy firsthand, but what she hadn't expected was the social and romantic ripple effects of the potion. Each reaction, her crush leaning closer, the roommates teasing, Nimbus clinging desperately, revealed new layers of human and alien interaction she had never considered. The comedy was relentless. She flailed to reach the counter for balance, only to knock over a mug, spill glowing liquid across the floor, and send herself hopping backward into a basket of laundry, which tumbled with her. Each bounce exaggerated the absurdity, every glowing blush amplified the romantic tension, and every pheromone release pulled unsuspecting participants into the whirlwind. At one point, she collided mid-bounce with her crush in what could only be described as an accidental, chaotic embrace. Limbs tangled, glowing blushes brushing against each other, and pheromones causing heightened awareness of every touch, they tumbled together across the floor. She tried to disentangle, hopping wildly, while he held on, laughing nervously but clearly fascinated. Even Nimbus leapt onto them, purring in insistence, as though demanding to be included. In the midst of the mess, she caught a glimpse of her roommate, still grinning and clearly enjoying the spectacle, and realized the prank had gone far beyond her expectations. Despite the embarrassment, the bouncing, the pheromones, and the airborne cat, a strange warmth settled over her. It was not just the potion's effects but the undeniable sense of connection, of shared laughter and vulnerability. She had feared being alone in her curiosity, but here she was, utterly exposed, ridiculous, and yet not entirely alone. Her crush smiled at her mid-bounce, and she felt the tiniest flutter of affection, alien and human, combined in a moment of chaotic comedy. She had wanted to experience pregnancy firsthand, but what she was experiencing now was something far richer, the unpredictable, uncontrollable, hilarious, and strangely tender dance of life, love, and chaos all tangled together. And so, as she bounced again across the apartment, Nimbus clinging to her shoulder, glowing blush flaring brightly, and her crush laughing in bewildered amusement, she began to laugh herself. A soft, high-pitched giggle that morphed into melodic squeaks with every hop. Her laughter bounced alongside her body, a soundtrack to the absurdity. In that moment, she understood more than biology. She understood how messy, ridiculous, and wonderful connection could be. The potion had done more than teach her about pregnancy. It had thrown her into a whirlwind of affection, embarrassment, and comic disaster that she would never forget. By the time the potion's effects began to wane, the apartment looked like the aftermath of a minor interstellar storm. Cushions were scattered across the floor, a few mugs and plates lay in precarious heaps, and Nimbus, the cat, was sprawled across a glowing pile of laundry, looking equally exhausted and content. The alien girl slowly sank to the floor, antennae drooping and her glowing blush dimming to soft, gentle hues. Her limbs still twitched with occasional bounces, reminders of the chaos that had consumed the last few hours, but the intensity had faded enough for her to catch her breath. She blinked rapidly, her mind buzzing with a mix of relief, lingering embarrassment, and a strange, exhilarating satisfaction. Her crush, still hovering nearby despite the potion's dissipating effects, reached out carefully to help her stand. Their fingers brushed, and she flinched slightly, though the pheromones no longer commanded their attention. Instead, what remained was a quiet connection, a shared understanding forged through absurdity and chaos. He smiled, genuinely, no teasing in his expression this time, and she felt herself relax a little, warmth spreading through her chest in a manner completely unrelated to the potion. "You okay?" he asked, voice low but laced with concern. She nodded, letting herself be steadied by his hand, and for the first time in hours she felt something like normal balance, both physically and emotionally. Her roommate, unable to resist one last joke, peeked around the doorway. "Looks like someone had a rough evening," he said, a smirk dancing across his face. "Maybe next time, read the fine print on interstellar pregnancy potions." She shot him a glare that could have melted stars if she had been any less exhausted, but even that glare was softened by a reluctant, tired smile. The prank had gone far beyond her expectations, but it had also given her a glimpse into something far more interesting than biology: the unpredictability of life, laughter, and connection. Nimbus stirred, yawning and stretching, and the alien girl gently picked him up, feeling the cat's warmth against her still sensitive skin. Even the feline seemed to have settled into a peculiar sense of calm, a reflection of the apartment's transition from chaos to quiet. She cradled Nimbus close, noting with amusement that he seemed to have learned nothing from the ordeal, still insisting on cuddling her as though the last few hours had been a perfectly normal day. She giggled softly, a sound that rippled lightly across the room, and her crush chuckled alongside her. The tension between them, previously fueled by pheromones and uncontrollable bouncing, had transformed into something more subtle, more tender, and infinitely more satisfying. Together they moved to straighten the apartment, the alien girl still glowing faintly as her blush lingered, an endearing reminder of the night's absurdity. Every object she touched seemed to resonate with the memory of her chaotic movements, a mug teetering just as she had bounced, a pillow flattened under her weight, a book tilted askew from her frantic leaps. Her crush helped, laughing quietly each time a pillow shifted unexpectedly or Nimbus tried to claim another random object as his own. The alien girl found herself laughing more freely than she had in weeks, and with each laugh, her confidence grew. She realized that part of understanding humans, and perhaps part of understanding pregnancy, was embracing the unexpected, the messy, and the ridiculous. Eventually, the apartment returned to a semblance of order, though not perfect. The mess bore witness to the night's adventures, a testament to curiosity, chaos, and laughter. The alien girl sank onto the couch, still holding Nimbus, and her crush settled beside her, careful not to disturb her delicate, recovering balance. Silence stretched for a moment, comfortable and filled with unspoken understanding. The earlier awkwardness, the embarrassing moments, and the overwhelming sensations of the potion had faded, leaving only a sense of intimacy born from shared absurdity. She felt her body relax, her antennae lowering, and her glowing blush softening into gentle lavender, almost like a sigh made visible. She looked at him, her eyes wide and sincere, and he returned her gaze with a tender smile. No words were necessary. The chaos had created a bond stronger than either of them had anticipated. They reached for each other, a careful, deliberate touch this time, and shared a quiet, meaningful connection that was entirely their own. The air, though free from the potion's pheromones, seemed charged with warmth, laughter, and the lingering glow of the night's events. She felt her heart, her alien equivalent, fill with a strange mix of gratitude, affection, and joy, emotions that had been impossible to fully comprehend before. In that moment, she reflected on the absurd journey that had brought her here. What had begun as a shy, cautious desire to understand pregnancy had transformed into a night of bouncing, glowing, pheromone-driven chaos, tangled limbs, cat antics, and romantic confusion. She had discovered more than biology. She had discovered herself, her courage, and the unpredictable, messy joy of connection. She giggled again, a soft, melodic sound, and her crush laughed in harmony, their hands brushing once more. Nimbus purred contentedly, finally settling on her lap, as if approving of the newfound peace. Even as she curled into the comfort of their shared warmth, a small part of her couldn't help but wonder if there might be more potions, more misadventures, and more moments that would push her curiosity, and her heart, to new extremes. But for now, she was content to bask in the quiet aftermath, the glow of her fading blush, the soft rhythm of bouncing only occasionally flickering, and the gentle, reassuring presence of someone who had shared the most absurd, vulnerable, and hilarious moments of her life. Life, she realized, was unpredictable, messy, and perfectly wonderful, and sometimes the best way to learn was to dive headfirst into chaos, laughter, and a little bit of romance. As the apartment settled into a calm, glowing hush, she let herself smile fully for the first time that night, tail curling comfortably around her, antennae twitching lazily, and Nimbus snuggled close. The potion had taken her on an unpredictable journey, but she had survived, laughed, and discovered connections she would never forget. And even as the glow faded from her skin, the warmth of shared experience, absurdity, and budding romance remained, a reminder that curiosity could lead to the most unexpected, and most delightful, adventures.